The worst part, not the worst part, one of, like, there's a car going by. You guys know me, that's not gonna happen. I get so ticked when people don't get my name right, and I don't feel like I have a complicated name and it gets butchered constantly, that I really need to do better. We are following two. I realize the solution is probably don't read thrillers, but come on. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to my March wrap-up part 1, because I'm going to break it up into 2, of course, which I usually do. So I did read 9 books, which I know is not like a ton of books, but I always have a ton to say. So anyway, we're going to do it in 2 parts. So you guys will start to see a theme, which I think is going to start to be a theme, at least for the next few months, where I am leaning heavily into audiobooks. Heavily. I don't know why I said it so dramatically, but if you guys have been following me, then you know I am a writer, and I am, you might not know this part, but I am deep into a really solid second draft editing mode where I am knocking on all the wood. I feel like I'm in a really good groove. So I am finding, which is not unusual for me when I'm in a writing mode, that working on my own writing and physically reading somebody else's book can be hard for me, but listening to somebody else's book can work for me. So all that to say, we have a lot of audiobooks coming your way this month. They were spectacular. I've read so many good books, and I'm currently listening to a new audiobook right now, and I'm just leaning into it. All the goodness. Let's get into it. March part 1. Okay, first book I have is the first book I read, which is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. I did the audiobook of this. It was read by Barrie, Kreinik, and she was spectacular, you guys. So I am a big Rachel Hawkins fan, which you guys would also know if you've been around my channel. I have read The Wife Upstairs, The Villa, which is her new book that came out this year, and then I finished this, which is her book that came out last year. So I was looking just for some great escapist fun, and that is 1000% what this book delivers. So we are set in and off the coast of Hawaii, and it was a great, also like cold wintertime read. It was cold wintertime here in March, and I actually started this end of February, beginning of March, and this took me to an island off Hawaii where it's like idyllic in all the best ways, but it's a thriller. So you know things are going to go horribly wrong, which I was super excited about. So in this book, if you guys saw my flowers on the cover Booktrovert Bingo recommendation, you would have heard me talk about this a smidge. But in this book, we are following Lux and her boyfriend Nico. So they met in San Diego about 6 months ago. She was working at a bar. He was a recurring customer, and he has decided he's going to sail his boat to Hawaii, and she decides to go with him. So they are working in Hawaii, kind of making ends meet. She is working as a maid at a hotel. He does a lot of sailing, boat trips, things like that. And they wind up meeting these 2 tourists who have been basically backpacking around Europe, and they offer Nico a ton of money to take them on a sailing excursion to this island, which is known for being very remote and off the beaten path. They are looking for something decidedly non-touristy to do. And the island also has a reputation of some bad stuff going down there. So the money is basically an offer he can't refuse. So Lux and Nico take them on this sailing excursion. And when they get to the island, they meet 2 other people who are on the same vibe. Sorry, I had to fact check names. So they get to the island, and there are 2 other sort of adventuresome sailors that are there, Eliza and Jake. And as fate would have it, the 6 of them get along famously, and they're having a great time, and they're drinking tons of wine, and they are just having a grand old time. And then it's a thriller, so things happen. But I really enjoyed this. So I feel like this has all the hallmarks of a Rachel Hawkins book. It's dark, there's some dark humor to it, there's some messed upness to it, and there's just secrets and lies, and just all sorts of stuff happens. And we get some dual timelines in this as well. There's some really brilliant lines in this. Rachel Hawkins has a great line in The Wife Upstairs, which is a retelling nod to Jane Eyre. And there's a line at the end of this where I was laughing out loud. And A, it's a spoiler, so I can't say it. And B, it's a little bit non-suitable. And it's hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical. So I loved this book so much. I'm such a fan of hers, you guys. And if you're looking for just, like I said, great escapist fun, I would definitely go into this. So it's a little bit of a slow burn at the beginning. You really get to know everybody, and I loved it. I totally loved it. So highly recommend this book. The next book I read is actually an ARC that I received from Wednesday Books, and this is Missing Clarissa by Ripley Jones. So this is a YA thriller in the vein of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which you guys basically know. No, I don't know why I'm saying basically. You guys know is, it's like telling me it's a Gone Girl book. And I do feel like there is a little bit of a trend that's been going around for a while that a lot of books are being comped to Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which I loved. And we do get a podcast element in this book, so I was totally here for it. So in this book, we are following two teenagers who are juniors in high school, Blair and Cameron, and they are doing a true crime podcast as part of their journalism class project, which I love. Like, I feel like when I took journalism in high school, obviously there weren't podcasts because, you know, time, but what a cool project that would be. And they decide to focus on a true crime that happened in their town. So present day is set present day. The past is August 1999. And cheerleader Clarissa Campbell was attending a party in her hometown, and she walked into the woods never to be seen again. No leads, the case grew cold, and Clarissa was never found. So they start to launch the investigation to find out what happened to Clarissa. And as luck would have it, people who were part of the town back then, it's a small town in Washington, are still there now, so they're able to do a lot of investigations. And of course, they're going to get themselves into some trouble and ruffle some feathers and shake out some secrets. They're revisiting a past that not everybody else wants to have revisited. So I did really enjoy this. I will say I was a little bit disappointed in how the podcast part was done. So we see them going to interview people from the past. The beginning was really good because we see them kind of fumbling with how to do a podcast and making mistakes, and there's some good humor to it, and I feel like you get a real chemistry between the two best friends. But then the way it's done later in the book is the podcast element is just the person they're interviewing basically doing a monologue. So you don't get that great back and forth Q&A podcast vibe, which I loved in Good Girls, which I loved in Sadie, which I've loved in so many other books. So it still delivers on mystery, and there's some really good writing in here, and there's some really good one-liners in here. I think it also is a great depiction of challenges of being kind of 16 or 17 years old, sort of figuring out who you are. I really identified a bit. One of the characters kind of wants to be a writer, but she's a little bit too apprehensive to talk about it and kind of doesn't get all the support. And you see her grappling with that. And then you also see the challenging dynamic between friends of that age. One of the girls has a boyfriend, how that plays in. One of the girls is very driven with the podcast, becomes low-key obsessed with it, and low-key finding out what happened to Clarissa. So you really see that dynamic between them, which felt very realistic to me. So all in, I enjoyed it. Is it a replacement for Good Girl's Guide? No, nothing is. And you'll hear me talk about that a bit more later in part 2. Teaser. But it was a good read. It was a fun time. I'm very grateful to Wednesday Books for sending it to me. So I was definitely interested in this book, so I'm glad I had a chance to read it. And I will definitely keep an eye out for Ripley Jones, who is an unknown person. I don't know who this person is. You can't find anything online about them, which probably is obviously by design. So yeah, I will be keeping an eye out for more from them in the future. The next book I read is also an ARC, and this is I Love It When You Lie by Kristen Bird. So Kristen herself actually sent this to me. We had connected on Instagram, so thank you again, Kristen, for sending it to me. I'm so excited. This is from Mira Books. This is out now. Missing Clarissa is also out now. I should have mentioned that. So I read Kristen's first book the night she went missing last year, which was her debut. I had read the blurb on it. I actually wound up pre-ordering it with another book, and I just totally loved it. I really enjoyed her writing. I enjoyed her storytelling, and I wanted more. So when I saw that she had a new book coming out, I was excited. And I had actually posted, I had recommended The Night She Disappeared on my Instagram, which is when Kristen reached out to me. Anyway, more perks / proof that this is an amazing community of people on Instagram and here. So anyway, what's the book all about, you guys want to know? I really enjoyed this book. This is about 3 sisters. I love a family drama book. It is, I would say, slow burn suspense is what we get from this book. So we get multiple POVs, we get multiple timelines. And in this one, it says the Williams women don't just keep secrets, they bury them. So the 3 Williams sisters, June, Clementine, and Tara, are planning to celebrate their grandmother's 80th birthday. And unfortunately, their grandmother winds up passing away right before her 80th birthday. So instead of celebrating her birthday, they've all reunited for her funeral. So Graham lives in this small town. She had actually raised them when their parents were killed in a car accident. So they are very close to her. This is obviously a very tough time for them. And they're coming together, resurrects old secrets, introduces some new secrets, a lot of emotion, a lot of heightened things go on during this long weekend. So they all return to the Appalachian foothills to bury their grandmother. And it says, but their grandmother won't be the only one they'll put in the grave this weekend, because now someone has gone missing in the dark Appalachian woods. And if Gran has taught them anything, it's how to get rid of a good-for-nothing man. So I just really enjoyed this. So again, this is one of these books where we know on page 1, someone has gone missing. We're trying to figure out who. And I feel like as the story builds, you can start to kind of figure out who might be the person who's gone missing. We're still trying to figure out the how and the why. And again, we're getting sort of multiple POVs, multiple timelines. We also get a POV from Stephanie, who is married to their brother. So she is not really a Williams sister, but she's part of the family. So we're getting her perspective kind of as our outsider looking in. I really connected with Clementine, who is the youngest sister in this book. Not everything that happens to her, but elements of her. And I really enjoyed her points of view chapters. I would say the most. Her and Stephanie, I feel like I enjoyed the most. But I really found the complexities of these women really interesting, the connections of their sisterhood. 2 of the sisters are married, and Stephanie is married to their brother. There are, mothers, sisters. You get to really understand the family dynamics. You get to see the different challenges that they have, the pressures that they're under. And it's really kind of reminds me in a Defending Jacob way, though, not plot-wise, but kind of how far will you go and what will you do to protect your family? And I love that in a book. Like, I just love that kind of, I wouldn't even call it a trope, but I love that kind of storytelling. So again, very slow burn, super atmospheric. I'm not at all familiar with this neck of the woods, and I really felt like I could feel like the weather, and like you could smell it and you could hear it, and it was like such a beautifully painted picture, and I just really enjoyed these sisters. So she's going to continue to be an author that I'm going to look out for, and I just really enjoyed it. Also another book with a beautiful cover, by the by, and I thought it was great. So again, thank you to Kristen Bird for sending it to me. It's so great. It's really, really good. And if you guys haven't read both of her books or either of her books, I recommend you pick them up because they're a good time. Next up is a book that I've had on my shelf for a really, really long time, and it's Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Malloy. So I'm trying to do a mix of new releases, upcoming releases, and shopping my own shelf. And I decided to give this book a go. So I definitely enjoyed this. I did the audiobook of this one. It was read by Toomey. I have to say, the audio narration lent a lot to this book. And it's really hard to talk about this book without spoiling anything. But if anybody's read it, feel free to DM me privately. Don't talk about it down below. But there was something in this book, and I was talking to my friends about it, and I was just like, oh, I don't know, and blah, blah, blah. And then I was just like, okay. And just so smart in how things were done in this book, and so smart in how things were revealed. There also is an allusion to an existing book where, if you know it, it's a very well-known book. I don't want to say what it is. You can find out when you're reading it. Where I feel like if you're familiar with that book, some things will start to become a little more clear to you as you're reading this. Does that help? And not even in the sense of like Agatha Christie and Then There Were None type of a thing, but I'm going to be super vague. I don't want to ruin this for anybody because I knew next to nothing about it going in other than a bit of the inside flap. So I'm just going to give you guys that. So in this one, we have newlyweds Sam and Annie. They are head over heels and excited to say goodbye to New York City, and they decide to start a life in upstate New York in Sam's hometown. So Sam's mom has been put into a nursing home, and he is coming up to kind of help take care of her and also to just have a quieter, dare I say, better life. They just want to get out of the city. So Sam is a psychotherapist, and his home office has a ceiling vent where the person sitting in that room can hear everything that's going on in his sessions. And it's really tempting to listen in to his sessions. So that's what happens. That's what happens. So he has a mostly female clientele, and listening into these conversations and these sessions start to bring up some questions. And then when Sam goes missing, even more questions come up. So it's definitely one of these books where you're in for a bit of a ride. I definitely enjoyed it, and I had a fun time. This is my first Amy Molloy book, so I feel like it's a solid thriller. If you are familiar with the thriller genre, like I said, I feel like some things might be a little clearer to you, especially if you're familiar with books that are referenced within, but it's still definitely a worthwhile read, I would say. And I love the concept of listening in. I'm such a nosy person. I love the concept of listening into his sessions, though. I just think it's a great premise, and it just leads to all sorts of like perfect dark and messed upness that we love in a thriller. So definitely had a good time with this book. I also do have her debut, The Perfect Mother, which I've heard great things about as well. So like I said, definitely interested in some more Amy Molloy, and lucky for me, I already have some on my shelf. And the last book I want to talk about for part one is The Dead Season by Tessa Wiegert. So this is the second book in the Shana Merchant series. The first book, A Death in the Family, is a book that I absolutely loved. It does have a little bit of an Agatha Christie and Then There Were None vibe to it, which is why I love it. And this continues Shana's story. So Shana was an NYPD detective, and in the first book, we meet her after she has moved to upstate New York with her then fiance. And she is working at the police department up there. And she's been there, I want to say they'd been there like 6 months when the first book opens. So some stuff went down when she was in New York, in New York City, which continues to follow her, as stuff is bound to do in a thriller. And we meet Shana when she and her partner Tim are called to an island off the coast, an island that is owned by a very rich family because they own the dang island. And this is book number 1, by the by, that I'm talking about. And in the first book, the grandson of the owner of the island, who was a grown adult, he's like in his late 20s, is missing, and there's a lot of blood in his bed. So they wind up being called out there to help investigate. You get a nor'easter, they wind up getting stranded on the island, and stuff goes down. This book picks up about 6 weeks after the first book, and I'm not going to talk too much about details because I don't want to give anything away from book number 1. But in this book, again, we are meeting Shana about 6 weeks later, and there is a case that is happening in the town where she lives, and then she also gets a call from her parents. So she is from a small town in Vermont, and the body of her estranged uncle has been found, and everyone in their family believed that 20 years ago he left town because he was like, I'm out, I'm leaving town. He left his wife, he left his kids, but then his body is discovered in their town. So Shana winds up returning home as well to unofficially sort of help try and figure out what happened there. So I wound up doing a combination of reading and listening to this book. This was read by Callie Beaulieu. I'm saying that completely wrong. Why am I so bad at pronouncing people's names, you guys?
Narrated by Callie Beaulieu.
Narrated by Carrie Beaulieu. Man, did I not get that even completely close to right. So she did a really great job with this book. She narrates all of Tessa Wiegert's books, which I love. I found that with the Patricia Cornwell Kay Scarpetta series. The same narrator did a whole bunch of those books, so it's so easy to like feel like you're listening to, in this case, Shana talking, which I love. So we get a mix of police investigation, we get some family business in this one as well, we get some past and present mysteries, and I very much enjoyed it. So this is the book, I would say, and it's not the book, it's me, where I started to hit the point where I was like, I'm having a hard time physically reading books, because what happens, especially because I'm writing, I don't know if I would call it suspense or thriller. I feel like there's so many, I don't know, connotations to what's what. It's not a police investigation what I'm writing, but I'm writing a past and present mystery. And for me, when I'm reading it, it's hard for my brain to not drift. So I don't have a problem in the sense of I'm like, ooh, this is a good idea, I'm going to use it. Or ooh, this is a good plot point, I think I'm going to work it into my book. My problem is I'm reading Shana investigating something and I'm like, oh, my character needs to investigate this thing. So what if I have her do that? And all of a sudden I'm like down a pathway of my own stuff. So I realize the solution is probably don't read thrillers, but come on, you guys know me. That's not going to happen. So I turned to the audiobook and it was really good. So I'm very excited. I do have the 3rd book in the series, and then the 4th book came out last year, which honestly, it's just a matter of time before I buy it. I have heard from people who have read this that the series continues to get better as we go. So like I said, I loved book 1 and I very much enjoyed this book. I feel like maybe... no, that's a spoiler. Okay. I feel like one thing in here I would have changed if I was the one writing it, but I really enjoyed Shayna's journey. And what I enjoy about what Tessa Wiegert does with Shayna is, and I feel like Patricia Cornwell does a great job at this as well, as do many other authors, is you have a character who is dealing in police investigation, who is dealing with some heavy stuff, who has her own personal baggage that she's dealing with. And you see how all of these things continue to impact your character. I saw this a lot in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series as well. You see that this is not someone who's just, boom, I'm better the next day, everything's fine, I shook it off, or in the next book, it's 6 weeks later, psh, everything's totally okay. You see how things that these people are facing and dealing with and being exposed to continue to haunt them and fuel who they are as a person and impact their choices and their viewpoints and their actions. And I very much enjoy how real that feels to me, where you don't get kind of an end of an hour-long TV show where everything's all wrapped up in a pretty bow at the end. And I know there's plenty of TV shows who don't do that, but I really enjoy how we see Shayna impacted by things. There's so many things I want to say that I can't say because spoilers, but I had a really good time with this book, and I'm really excited to see more of Shayna and read more of her. So again, I also feel like this is a bit of a slow burn. It's investigation, but it's not high octane thriller. And this is where I feel like the T word can get us in trouble sometimes. So a slow burn, good police investigation. There's some characters in here that I very much enjoy. And again, I will keep you guys posted as I continue with the series. This is one of my 23 and 23. So look at me getting stuff done there too. And yeah, great audiobook. Great audiobook. Also super atmospheric, which was fun. And yeah. There you have it. So that's going to do it for part 1 of what I read. I will be back with 4 more books, and they were all audiobooks, you guys, all audiobooks. So stay tuned for that. But let me know what you read. Have you read any of these books? What was a good hit for you guys this month? Any of you guys out there who are writers, how do you deal with reading while writing, reading while editing? I would love any kinds of tips and tricks you guys maybe have. I'm here for all of it, but this is me just figuring out how to do all the things that I want to be doing at the same time. But I hope everyone is doing wonderfully. If you were doing Booktrovert Bingo, I need to update my board. I haven't done that yet. Failing at my own. I'm not failing at my own bingo, but I'm failing at updating my own bingo. But I love seeing everybody's posts that they have, and I'm glad to see people are reading so many amazing books out there too. So I will see you guys in another video very soon. Until then, I hope you guys are doing great. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting me. If you're new here, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff too. I would love to have you guys back for more, because there's more coming. So until then, take care, everybody. Bye.